it's like this insatiable beast that you keep having to feed. You just achieve, and then what's next, and then what's next, and then you throw on top of that social media and all these things where now you're playing this game of comparison as well too. And so it's just this ongoing uh, hamster wheel that really I found that it's sometimes you just have to get off of that, disconnect. If we were to rewind the clock way back when I was 5 years old, my family had just come to America. We had immigrated from Vietnam and really escaping the war that was going on back in the 70s. And growing up as an immigrant child, I found that I never really felt like I fit in. And part of my way of really adapting to that and trying to fit in was to achieve. That was really my sense of getting a lot of self-worth and recognition. And so that continued most of my life, being, a really high achiever, successful, working hard all the time, and eventually also realizing that the corporate track just wasn't the place that was aligned with who I wanted to be and the life I wanted to live. And so over the last 20 years or so, I pursued the entrepreneurial track and have tried to chase a lot of different opportunities, varying degrees of success with businesses, from web and marketing company to a social club to a food business to being a landlord, and really about 6 years ago hitting that wall, realizing that that I was completely burnt out and just didn't really know what I wanted to do, and was at a state where my health, my relationships, and everything was really suffering, and to the point that I actually had a moment where I was considering just taking my own life. And it was one of those moments that really woke me up to press the pause button and saying, hey, what do I need to do to really reconnect with myself? And that was when I started practicing this idea of going out to the Oregon coast, because I had lived in Portland, Oregon. And over the course of the next year or so, every week I made it a personal practice to create that space, to take that time off, to spend time reconnecting with nature and doing some reflection and practicing gratitude, and really choosing that space so that I could realign where I wanted to go. And that started this eventual journey that has led me to travel around the country. Was around last year, not last year, 2 years ago, was I was having a casual meeting with my business coach, and the idea of traveling just kind of popped in my head, and I started to reflect on, well, where do I want to be a year or 2 years from now? And I realized that exactly where I was not where I wanted to be, and so I made a decision to give up my apartment, put stuff into storage, and hit the road, not really knowing exactly where I was going to be, what I was going to do, but knowing that that was part of the experience. That was part of the life journey to really discover what the next step is. And so many amazing things have come from that.
Wow, it's so beautiful, brother. I've been reading more about that. It is a thing to belong, right? And sometimes when we don't feel like we belong, then a quest to be an achiever, to kind of show, hey, I can contribute, I can do this, is kind of in lieu of, and everything I've read about it, the more you achieve doesn't really solve that. So I'm assuming that's what you found. You're shaking your head no, but that's what you found as well.
Yeah, it's like this insatiable beast that you keep having to feed. You just achieve, and then what's next, and then what's next, and then you throw on top of that social media and all these things where now you're playing this game of comparison as well too. And so it's just this ongoing uh, hamster wheel that really I found that sometimes you just have to get off of that, disconnect, and really find out what's really important. What's really important for me, and where does that joy come from? Where does that life, where does that connection, what's most important? And I think that unless we create that space, that pause to do that, it's so easy to get caught up in that spiral, that wheel.
Like a hamster wheel. Yeah. Like, and this happens so often. It could be so many different things of achievement. Like some people come to me and they've made millions of dollars, and it's the idea that if I achieve this, or I have this money, or I reach this position, I become CEO, I build a company with so many XYZ employees, or whatever, anything you put that label on, and go for it. And then so many people I find that they get there and they're like, what? Like, it's like that it'll give you that thing that you're driving for, that in this case, the sense of belonging. And then it's like, oh no, that didn't solve it. So you either just keep going forward and achieve the next thing and the next thing, and then you're on the wheel like you're talking about, or you wake up like you have and say, wait a minute, this isn't allowing me to find what I want.
Yeah. And I think it boils down to this lack of something, and in some case belonging, some case worthiness. But even you take that a step further, right? And I remember when we first met, you had asked this question: what does having that do for you? And what does having that do for you? What does having that do for you? Well, if you ask that enough times, for me, I've discovered that it boils down to just being loved and feeling loved. If I am worthy enough, if I belong, then I'll be loved, and if I achieve enough, then and it gets to feeling loved. And sometimes that comes from within ourselves.
But yeah, I would probably say almost always, right? Like at some level, you have to love yourself to be loved anywhere else. And no matter what we do, no matter how much we try to fill it up with anything else, it doesn't replace that. And you're right. That's my favorite magical question. What will having that do for you is such a great way to dive, and great memory, by the way, that it has that ability. And that's what I always say whenever I set a goal for myself, or when I'm working with a client or anyone. It's like, whatever I say, whatever comes out of my mouth, I'm like, oh, okay, well, what will having that do for you? And then you can get to the root of that. And sometimes you find you either are really close to having it, or you already have it. I've even had people, they already have it, and they're like still going for that achievement, blind that we already have that thing. And we thought that we had to have more money to have it, when it really wasn't true. Right.
Yeah. I use that phrase all the time, by the way.
Yeah.
All the time. So thank you for that gift.
Well, yeah. And that comes from beyond me. So like, my teacher, Carl Buchheit, who actually my first mentor, Jeffrey Slater, brought that into my world, who was mentored by Carl Buchheit, who later became my mentor as well, and teacher, who also learned that from old time neurolinguistics. So it comes from like handing the baton by handing the baton by handing the baton. So many great people before us brought these words to our lips and tongue, and it's perfect. It's like I do say it's a magical question, because it really truly is. It gets to the root in a very simple way. What will having that do for you? Gets you right to the depth of the emotion and allows you to discover. And I do ask that question, like you said, over and over. I ask it over and over until I get to what's the root? What's the root of what I want? Hey there, I want to give you something really big. It's called Clear Path to Customers. It's the way that we get the right language to get the right client. I like to call them your wow clients, so that you can have more results, more revenue, more raving fans, and more referrals. And I want to give this to you absolutely free. And all you have to do is go to stevenapolitan.com to check it out, or you can look at the description here. We'll put the details there. As always, remember, choose gratitude and create freedom.